This is my first time here. Ta-da. Thank you. And although I've done lots of talks in lots of centers all over the place, you know, the first time you show up anywhere, it's a bit nervy, right? What if I fall flat? What if the talk doesn't go over? And with all my experience, I began to have those thoughts and those fears, right? And being a good little new thought practitioner and somebody who's really tried to live this spiritual philosophy for many years, I had to sit down and go to work on that. So the title of this talk is called Falling Forward, and it's all about failure, okay? How we fail, how we feel about failing, how we recover from failing, and why in the heck should we be grateful for falling flat on our face in the mud of a bad experience, right? Well, to start with, we all know that failure is a universal experience, right? And I'm going to give us two examples of people who failed spectacularly and still succeeded, and you'll know them both. The first one is Thomas Alva Edison, the inventor of the light bulb and 38 gazillion other things. But here's an interesting factoid about Thomas Edison. He once estimated that he had 1,000 failed attempts to make a working light bulb. 1,000 failures, oh dear God. Can you imagine? And then the other person is the writer C.S. Lewis, whom I'm sure many of you know. One of the things he wrote, for example, was The Chronicles of Narnia, that iconic now book of metaphysical fantasy, quote, for children, that has sold 120 million copies around the world in 47 languages. Now, factoid. C.S. Lewis had his manuscripts rejected 800 times before he finally got published. I mean, 800 letters of rejection. You could paper your room with that, right? Now, personally, I failed to achieve a B grade in high school in algebra and in geometry.
Can I join your club?
Yeah, right, well, I did my best. But those C grades kept me from being the valedictorian of my class, my graduating class. And as you can tell, it ruined my life forever. You know, sometimes failure comes in all shapes and sizes, in all forms, and at all levels of significance, right? But come it does. But come it does. Yes, it's a universal experience. But is it a bad experience? I'm going to start this by using a quote from Shakespeare, Hamlet. And when I say it, I'm sure you'll know it. There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. I see heads nodding. Okay. I believe that. Shakespeare believed that, and he wrote it back in 1600. So as I think about what he said, and I thought about this whole thing about falling forward, there are 3 points about failure I would like to share with you that I hope you take home and contemplate over the coming week. The first is perspective. The second is redirection. And the third is perseverance. 3 spiritual practices. And we'll start with perspective. Nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. We all experience success and failure in many times and many ways. In our professional work, of course, perhaps in our relationships, which can be very painful, in our creative attempts, even in our domestic chores, for example, and I will cite my early pot roasts as supporting evidence on that. God, they were awful. So at any of our attempts to learn a new skill, failure is a possibility. And when we are wildly successful, it feels great, doesn't it? We've all had that experience. And the only danger of being wildly successful is that success can go to one's head, right? My dad, who ran an advertising agency for many years, always told me, honey, don't believe your own press. In other words, the lesson is not to let success consume the ego. Then when we fail spectacularly, it does feel awful. No doubt about that. But just as we are wise to not let success consume our ego, we are wise to not let failure consume our hearts. This perspective that we choose when we fail makes all the difference between wearing sackcloth and ashes and declaring ourselves a victim and a martyr and a loser, or being somebody who gets up, brushes themselves off, and tries again. Just like Michael was singing about, so funny, so true. And I have actually experimented with both sides of that coin. I mean, I have given up and thrown dust on my head and, oh, woe is me, I really messed it up, that's terrible, I'm awful, blah, blah, blah. You know. And then at a different time, I fell down, got myself up, shook the pebbles out of my knees, and tried again. So over the years, I can tell you from experience, falling forward is the way to go. And what I mean by falling forward is that failure does not necessarily mean that my idea was flawed or invalid, let's say. Maybe sometimes, but not always. I mean, it doesn't even mean that I didn't execute my plan well. I mean, poop happens, right? Poop that I have no control over. I mean, poop that somebody might throw into my smoothly working gears that I didn't expect. Because we're all working this together, and sometimes we have different ideas about what the outcome may be. So, it happens. But make no mistake, yeah, it pinches. It pinches hard. But as a minister of religious science, I am clear about the importance of acknowledging when we have emotions or feelings that hurt. I'm not about to do that spiritual bypass and go, it's all God, it's all good. Yeah, I honor my own feelings, and I acknowledge them. Yes. I mean, why should I like something that something that I put so much of my effort and my heart into? But on the other hand, and at the same time, what I also know, because God and I are one, is that I can make that unpleasant experience grist for the mill of my soul. Grist for the mill of my soul. And it's all about that little matter of perspective. In religious science, we have what I call the tagline, change your thinking, change your life. In New Thought, we know that's the way it works. We know that. And this applies big time when we encounter failure, truly. I mean, falling forward is applying this belief to the tumble we just took, right? And then ending up back on our feet, ready to go. One of the hardest things I learned when I was back in the corporate world as a corporate executive was how to graciously accept constructive criticism when I didn't do something right. But thank God I did, though. And this is spirit in action. Because when I sat down to have those hard conversations about where I went wrong, two things occurred. One, wow, I really learned something that helped me to do my job better. Imagine that. And then second, and here was the real icing on that cake, the person offering me this constructive feedback and criticism was invariably grateful that I actually accepted it instead of resisting it and saying, no, you're wrong, I'm right, and throwing a little snit fit. And judging from how they would respond to me when I go, oh, thank you, they go, whoa. The other thing must have happened to them an awful lot. So, this ability to go with this openness and to fall forward was a win-win. Not only did I learn something new and better about how to do my work, I also made a trusted colleague out of someone who had the ability, usually, to elevate or crush my career. So it worked at all levels of being, grist for the soul. So perspective really is important. But then we go back to, then, having seen in a certain way, what do you do then? And that's called redirection. Another thing Michael was singing about. Redirection. Now, in the old days, before we had that glorious miracle called GPS, sat-nav in cars, had you ever ridden with someone who would not stop to get directions, even though you knew they were going the wrong way? And the more you pushed, the more they resisted. And that's happened to me until I felt like reaching over and grabbing the wheel and just taking over because they didn't want to redirect. And I think sometimes God must have felt that way about me. I would like to bring this slide up for just a moment, please, that I brought. Thank you. That had been me more times than I'm comfortable admitting. Yeah. Redirection. Thank you very much. You can take that down. I mean, whether it be in our professional lives or personal lives, course corrections are needed, right? And with every course correction that presents itself or that trips us up and makes us fall, we learn something valuable. Failure points to the possibility of something better. Failure gives us an opportunity to learn. And having chosen then to look at our failure in a positive light and then redirected, we can reevaluate whatever it is ours to do. Yeah. And with all of that we've done, we come back stronger. We come back more informed. We are more beautifully equipped to go with the flow. That happens the second time around, and the third and the fourth. We just get better and better and better. So frankly, in my experience, winners are not afraid to lose, but losers are. Yeah. When I redirect my energy from looking back at how I went wrong and how I failed, to looking forward, falling forward, my life becomes a lot bigger. My life becomes much bigger. At home, in my office, I had this lovely leather box that was a gift from many years ago, and on top is a saying from Emerson. It says, "Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." Well, sometimes when I go where there is no path, I stumble through high weeds, I trip over hidden roots, and I fall into boggy puddles that suck my shoes off. In other words, I feel lost, I feel like I'm a failure, and I'm tired, hot, and bootless anyway. But redirection can be tough, no doubt about it. Yeah. But isn't being a trailblazer more fun than just simply following the path the herd has made? I'm going to give you one quote from T.S. Eliot, because this is the quote that really kicked me into it. "Only those who risk going too far can possibly find out how far one can go." Got it? Only those who risk going too far can find out how far one can possibly go. So, yeah, while redirecting can be tough, as I said, it's the way to go, because when I turn my face forward instead of looking back, I'm looking at new vistas, new opportunities, because if I look back, there's nothing but closed doors. Nowhere to go. Redirection. So that gets me to my third and last point. perspective. I've chosen to look at it, redirection. I've found that I can turn around and try it again in a different way. Perseverance is the last point. Winston Churchill said that success is not final and failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. I mean, think about Edison, think about Lewis. My God, those men must have had some really, really tough nights of the soul. Am I ever going to do this? And yet, I can really understand and identify with that sense of, oh God, please. And I also love identifying with their courage to wonder, well, what if? Wait a minute. What if I did it this way? What if? I wonder. Those two words, I wonder, or what if, are like, I don't know, these beautiful open doors that lead to a whole new field of possibility. Again, you look back over your shoulder, closed doors. You fall forward into a whole new universe. And truly, there are ways to fail with grace and humility, like asking and accepting for constructive criticism with gratitude instead of resistance. Persistence, perseverance, that courage to continue. Yeah, that's what really makes us grow. And I know that if you're here and if you're online, where's the camera? Over there, okay. You're at least a somewhat experienced spiritual seeker. And you know that the spiritual growth is all about falling down and getting up. And falling down and getting up and forgiving ourselves for when we fall down, right? Because God does not judge us at all. God is just this open invitation and a helping hand, right? If and when we have strings of successes in our life, following in our wake, I think we have a tendency as humans to do this. We assume it's always going to be this way, right? We stop wondering. We stop being open to learning something new or trying something different, something wonder-filled. And there's a phrase that sums that up. It's called resting on your laurels. And that phrase comes from the first Olympic Games, and I thought this is appropriate. You know, when the winner, back in those days when the Olympic Games were really starting, was crowned with entwined laurel leaves as a sign of victory. Okay. So, to rest on one's laurels, then, is to live off one's reputation for what once had been accomplished, and to refrain from any further effort to see what more could be accomplished. That's pretty much of a closed door. And I don't think God and life itself is about closed doors. Life wants to out. God wishes to express. Stepping through, falling forward, growth, all of that. And I think you might agree with me when I say, I have more admiration for the student, the athlete, the worker who falls down and fails and gets up again and tries again. We've seen it happening, you know, than one who wins easily. Because we recognize the strength of character and the integrity of those people that keep working and trying again. I am buoyed up by knowing that great minds like Edison and C.S. Lewis didn't give up. I mean, our lives would have been much poorer if they had. Just as your life would be a lot poorer if you gave up easily. So, and in closing, I'm going to say, may you fail spectacularly, and may you fall forward into your greater yet to be. And so it is. Namaste.
There's a mention in here of me playing ukulele, because when I originally did this tune, I was playing ukulele. I'm not playing it today, so I'm lying. So when you hear that line, know that I am cognizant of that fact. Okay. But I couldn't find another word that fit in the spot. So that was my dilemma. So with that in mind.
What rhymes with ukulele?
I know, yes. 13, orange. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, it's almost, but not quite. God says it's all right. The right track and pretty close. A good prescription, but the wrong dose. Back to the drawing board. Sketch it out, re-explored. Run it up the flagpole. Once again, you're in control. 'Cause I write the line, but the line stops. I fix the circuit, but the breaker pops. There's no use in crying, 'cause God knows I'm trying. I'm pretty good around my kids, and my life hasn't hit the skids. Things okay, it could be better. It's a little cold, should've worn my sweater. Well, it's all right, but not quite. God says it's all right. The right track and pretty close. The good prescription, but the wrong dose. I'm back to the drawing board. Sketch it out, re-explored. Run it up the flagpole. Once again, you're in control. These kind of things sort of bug me a bit, but I've got big ideas and I won't quit. Even if it's not stacked up right, I'll still sleep really well tonight. Well, I may be just a little short of the mark. I still find my way in the dark. My dog sort of likes me and the cat don't bite. Maybe these lyrics just need a rewrite. Well, it's almost, but not quite. God says it's all right. The right track and pretty close. A good prescription, but the wrong dose. Back to the drawing board. Sketch it out, re-explode. Run it up the flagpole. Once again, you're in control. I know I will slowly pull it all together. Find my niche, my birds of a feather. And everything I touch will be good and golden, including this uke which I be holding. Well, you maybe say the song ain't serious. It kind of makes you laugh, it's just a bit humorous. Well, I ain't worried if it don't pass muster, 'cause I'm still standing unlike George Custer. Almost, but not quite. God says it's all right. The right track and pretty close. A good prescription, but the wrong dose. Back to the drawing board. Sketch it out, re-explored. Run it up the flagpole. Once again, you're in control.